It's the rebrand nobody plans for and why it's so costly. You don't really own your podcast until you own the brand completely and it has survived some growth. You see, a show isn't just content. No, it's a name, it's recognition, and it's also search history, audience trust, and momentum. And here's the hard thing. The worst time to discover a brand problem is when your show is finally working and everything is dialed in. When downloads are up, sponsors calling, partnerships forming, when revenue finally starting to be predictable. That's when brand weaknesses become very expensive. Because at that point, you're not just changing a name, you're interrupting momentum. And the cost isn't just what most people think. Let's talk about what that really does look like. All right, welcome back. Listen, if your show is gaining traction, even modest traction, you're in what I call the calm window. Before we go further, though, if you want clarity about your brand position and whether your foundation is rock solid before that growth magnifies the exposure, you could schedule a trademark strategy call with me just by visiting firemark.com/TM call. Now, the conversation that we're having is about assessing risk while things are calm, not reacting when things get chaotic. Now, I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and for more than 3 decades, I've helped creators and media businesses protect what they're building. And one of the most painful scenarios I see over and over again, unfortunately, is the forced rebrand after a show starts to grow and take off. It's almost always more disruptive than people really expect. So today, I want to walk through when this kind of thing happens, why it happens, what it actually costs, and why timing changes everything. When your show is small, everything feels fine. No complaints, no letters, no threats, no platform notices. Silence can feel like security. But silence is not confirmation. It's just absence of friction. Growth changes all that. Growth increases your visibility, and visibility increases scrutiny. The better your show performs, the more likely someone will notice. Now, that's not paranoia, that's just math. When you matter, you get seen, and when you get seen, you get evaluated. Now, most creators assume that if there were a brand conflict, it would show up early, but in reality, it doesn't. It shows up at these leverage points. So let me show you what that means. Let's say you land a meaningful brand deal, not just a $200 host read ad, but a serious partnership. The sponsor's legal team runs some due diligence and they ask, do you own this brand name? Is it registered? Is it cleared? You've been operating under common law rights and you assume everything's fine. But now the sponsor wants documentation. So you file an application and it gets refused because of a similar mark already registered. Or worse, it gets opposed by someone who has a conflicting interest to yours. Now the sponsor pauses. The deal stalls, the legal review stretches, momentum freezes, and what felt like success becomes instability at best. Not because your show wasn't good, but because your brand foundation wasn't fully secured. And here's another scenario that I've seen more often than I'd like to. You've been operating for a couple of 3 years, maybe something like that. An audience is strong, your merch is live, the course is launching, whatever you're doing, and you decide it's time to make it official. You file a trademark application and it gets refused again because there's a similar existing registration. And now you're forced to evaluate risk after you've accumulated that value in your brand. And you have to decide, do you fight, do you negotiate, or do you rebrand? These decisions are expensive, especially when you're in this mid-growth phase. Now, let's say a competitor becomes aware of your growth. They file a trademark complaint with the platform. Platforms don't adjudicate nuance. They are interested in protecting their own butts. So they don't conduct a full legal analysis. What they might do is ask for proof. Without the registration, you're arguing your position instead of demonstrating it. But even if you ultimately prevail, you've lost time, and time is valuable, even when you ultimately win. Now, in media, attention is oxygen. So let's say the worst case happens. You rebrand. Most creators think, oh, I'll just change the name. Well, it's never just that. Operationally, you have to redesign your artwork, re-record all the intros and outros on those old episodes, update the RSS feeds, change website URLs, redirect the domains, secure new social media handles, update your media kits, update sponsorship contracts, notify partners, inform your audience, and financially, You're talking about legal costs, design costs, marketing and relaunching costs, lost sponsorship revenue, lost product launch timing. Strategically, you're disrupting your SEO history, your platform recommendation signals, your listener search habits are going to be disrupted, word of mouth continuity can get messed up, and brand recognition momentum is going to be delayed. So, rebranding late is more than just cosmetic, it's actually structural. And then there's the momentum problem. And here's what most people underestimate. See, momentum compounds. Podcast growth is cumulative. Each episode builds your authority and establishes things. Each mention builds recognition. Each share builds discoverability. Algorithms reward consistency. Audiences reward familiarity. And sponsors reward stability. When you disrupt the name, you disrupt all of that compounding effect. You don't just reset branding, you reset the entire trajectory. And trajectory is much harder to rebuild than to protect. So let me ask you something directly. If your show doubled in its downloads this year and then suddenly you had an issue, would you feel comfortable discovering that there was a brand issue next month? If a sponsor asked you today whether your name is fully protected, do you have all the rights to that name that you need, would you be able to answer confidently or would you be cautious? That hesitation is your signal. So here's a scenario you should think about. Let's imagine we have a podcast called Creator Advantage. It launches clean, there's no obvious conflicts. But 3 years later, 75,000 downloads per month happening. It's a big show. Membership community is live. There's a branded mastermind. There's merchandise. You've got a live event conference planned. And now some other company operating under Advantage Creators in business consulting raises an objection. Now, the names are not identical, but they are similar. The industries overlap. Expansion paths are starting to collide. Your risk analysis changes. Now, you are not evaluating risk at zero anymore. You're evaluating that risk after equity exists. That's when this window is expensive. Rebranding isn't just a technical adjustment. It's emotional. You have to tell your loyal listeners, hey, we're changing our name. You have to reassure sponsors that this won't hurt performance. You have to stabilize perception. Even if the change is strategic, it could feel like instability, and that perception matters. Now, let's put this in perspective in terms of the filing fee myth. A trademark application costs, a few hundred to maybe a bit more than $1,000 for each class of goods and services. A forced rebrand, though, could cost 5 figures in design and relaunch expenses, lost deal revenue, months of SEO, rebuilding, opportunity cost, attention cost, and the biggest, time, the time cost. And that's the only asset that you can't compound once it's lost. Every show has this calm window, the stage where growth is visible, revenue is emerging, brand identity is stabilizing, exposure increasing, and scrutiny is not yet very intense. During that window, decision-making is strategic. But after that window, decisions become reactive. You have professional brand strategy, and it's about acting in that calm window whenever possible, not in the crisis window. This is not about fear. It's about enterprise thinking. If you see your podcast as a marketing channel, a business engine, a platform for your products or goods or services or a long-term asset, then brand security is infrastructure you're building. You wouldn't build a house without checking the title on the property first. You wouldn't invest in real estate without verifying that you're going to own it. Your brand name is the title to your media property, and clear title matters. Now, if your show is gaining traction and you want to evaluate the brand foundation, make sure it's solid before growth magnifies things, I invite you to schedule a strategy call. Head over to firemark.com/tmcall and we'll assess your current exposure. We'll look at similar marks, expansion overlaps, risk tolerance, registration strategy, because clarity now prevents disruption later. Now, here's your takeaway. You don't really own your podcast until you own your brand completely, and you've been through some growth and it's survived. Growth tests the infrastructure that you've built. And if your brand survives that scrutiny at growth time, you have something durable. If it doesn't, what you have is exposed fragility. And fragility at scale is expensive. The worst time to discover a brand problem is when your show is finally working. So handle it while things are calm. Protect it while it's affordable. Strengthen it before it's tested. Protecting your name is one layer, but protecting yourself is yet another. So in our next episode, we're going to be shifting into business structure because owning the brand is powerful. But shielding your personal assets, that's foundational. So I'll see you there. And until then, keep on putting your message out, keep on podcasting, and get legit.